Welcome to Iron Rhetoric with your intrepid host, Pastor Brett McAtee. Truth forever on the scaffold, wrong forever on the throne. Yet that scaffold sways the future, and, behind the dim unknown, standeth God within the shadow, keeping watch above his own.
Hello, listeners of Iron Rhetoric. This is the Most High Reverend Brett McAtee from Charlotte, Michigan. And I'm wearing my Pope ring right now, and I'm hoping that some of you who are listening will come and kiss my ring. Something I've always envisioned happening is having a queue of people lined up in order to each come and kiss my ring. Nah, just kidding. This is Iron Rhetoric, and this is Pastor Brett. We're glad to have you with us. Wherever you're at, whatever day you're listening to, whatever time you're listening, I think I'd prefer you be reading some of the greats, but if you're not reading some of the greats and you're listening to me, I'm grateful. I'm just a small voice, but one that's intent on having my say. So thank you for listening, and we're going to talk a little bit about a article that Dr. Owen Strachan wrote recently on Substack. I think Matt's going to link it in Iron Rhetoric, so you can make sure that I'm dealing fairly with the good Dr. Owen Strachan. Remember, or at least I remember, and I might be going further back than maybe they don't do this anymore, but when I used to go to the fair, there was always a booth where some clown was in a wetsuit. He was sitting on a collapsible bench over a water tank, and there was a target that was to the right of him, where you would buy 3 balls for $1, 3 baseballs, and you would throw the baseball at the target, and if you hit the target, it would collapse his bench, and he'd go splash into the water. He would scream then insults at you as you walked by because he was trying to make you angry. To say, oh yeah, you say those things to me. I'm gonna give this guy a buck and get 3 baseballs to dunk you. Yeah, that was the whole thing that was going on. He was trying to lure you into throwing the baseballs, which would collapse the bench, which would result in the clown being immersed in water. Well, the clown, Dr. Owen Strachan, did something similar to me this week in an article he wrote on Substack. And now this is dated, and that article is clear back at the beginning of October, so it's not. It was this week when I wrote about this, but it's now dated a little bit. It seems that, I know this is going to be hard to believe for my audience, but it seems that Dr. Owen Strachan doesn't like me very much. And, of course, I lost a few nights' sleep over that. And as such, Owen decided to take my name in vain, seeking to treat me like an anchor to put around other people's necks so as to discredit whoever he connected me to. So in light of that, I thought I would play Walter Johnson to Owen Strachan's clown routine. Some of you aren't old enough probably to remember Walter Johnson. Maybe I should say Roger Clemens, and even he's dated now. Who's the big? Who's the guy who pitches for the Astros? Used to pitch for the Tigers. Anyway, a fastball pitcher. I thought I'd play your favorite fastball pitcher to Owen Strachan's clown routine and pitch a few baseballs at the metaphorical target in order to get Owen good and wet. Alternately, this post should see it as a kind of Owen Strachan slugfest. Here's Owen, and I'm quoting him now. There are 2 major elements of this movement. The movement he's talking about is kinism. There's 2 major elements of kinism, as I read it: multi-ethnic Christian nationalism and mono-ethnic Christian nationalism. Anyone want to tell Owen that multi-ethnic, by definition, can't be nationalism, unless it's a non-nationalist civic nationalism? Anyway, and no one shouldn't be too much faulted for that. I just read something by Joe Boot and Andy Sandlin, who argue the same way, that a Christian nationalism doesn't include the idea of an ethnicity at all. So Owen is just arguing the way a good many people argue on this. He continues, quote, Owen I'm quoting Owen here, in what follows I seek to show that mono-ethnic Christian nationalism should not be held by any true believer in the Lord Jesus Christ. Yeah, someone phone the Japanese or the Hungarians and give them Owen's message. Let them know. However, apparently mono-ethnic Judaism in Israel is perfectly acceptable as nationalism, and mono-ethnic communism is perfectly acceptable as nationalism for the Han Chinese. Owen is looking to get another doctorate, I think, here, and this time it's in stupidity. Continuing on, Reverend Owen Strachan says this, quote, Andrew Torba, I pray you understand the true biblical gospel, which has nothing to do with your kinist message of ethnic preservation and propagation. I say this in love. Can't you just hear it in my voice? You are promoting a false gospel. Yeah, it's because we respond. The true gospel means that you ignore the ongoing attempted genocide of your people because of love. The true gospel means that we love our children enough to turn a blind eye to their being replaced. The true gospel means that we love God enough to ignore the sixth commandment. Everyone knows the true gospel once embraced is a suicide pact. Reverend Owen goes on, quote, real talk. You go against interethnic marriage, you go against God. Yes, and I respond. Indeed, everyone should marry other races. We should destroy our bloodlines to rebuild the Tower of Babel. God would be pleased with that. Also, clearly in Ezra and Nehemiah, chapters 9 and 13, respectively, obviously they were in terrible sin for their actions that we find there. As we continue on, Dr. Owen Strachan, in his Substack article, faults Wolf merely for daring to quote something on Twitter that I had in turn quoted from a Harvard Law Review. So, get this. I'm quoting the Harvard Law Review. Wolf sees me quoting the Harvard Law Review and then quotes what I quoted from the Harvard Law Review. And Owen, from his Substack article, says this. Fourth, Wolf has engaged kinist and white nationalist voices in affirmatory terms. Here, for example, is Wolf reposting a take on blasphemy from dun-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, Brett McAtee. Here, Monan Owen invokes my name in connection with Wolf in the attempt to smear Wolf with little old innocent me. Can you imagine that? The idea is if Wolf is connected to McAtee, then obviously Wolf is poison. Well, yeah, I suppose that may be true. Next, Strachan writes, Brett McAtee is not a widely known voice, but he is an open kinist who was dismissed from the Christian Reformed Church for advocacy for such ideology. McAtee writes the Iron Ink blog. Here's how Alistair Roberts has described Iron Ink. The Kinist Iron Ink blog describes Who is My Neighbor as follows. This book is nearly 700 pages long, and it provides one quote after another culled from authors, both Christian and pagan, from ancient history to modern times, which demonstrates that the doctrines of kinism have been what all men in all times and all places have believed until the last 80 years or so. Now, in light of that, some analysis. First of all, thanks to the work of alienists like Doug Wilson and Alistair Roberts and now Owen Strachan, it's sure to be the case that Brett McAtee will soon be a widely known voice. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. You guys keep referencing me, and pretty soon people are going to say, what's this guy talking about? Matter of fact, I've gotten phone calls from people that, well, I wanted to talk to a real live kinist to see if all this exaggeration is true, and by the end of the conversation they say, well, clearly we may have one or two disagreements, but I don't view you as saying anything that far out. As we continue with our analysis on Owen's Substack column, we say that it was not possible, and I've said this over and over again, but I'll say it again here. It was not possible for me to be dismissed from the Christian Reformed Church since I was never ordained in the Christian Reformed Church. You cannot be defrocked if you were never frocked. I asked to leave, and I didn't even really have to do that, but I was trying to be honorable to them. So Owen is just an error here, and what's new? He's trademarked an error. Thirdly, would say, know how Strachan refuses to consider the material on Who is My Neighbor. This is a book put out by Dow, and Acord. Instead, Strachan decides to just damn all the evidence because I dare cite it as evidence. It's as if this is saying, quote, clearly all the evidence in Who Is My Neighbor can't be counted as evidence because McAtee recognizes it as evidence. What's the guy, we might want to ask just as an aside, what's the guy got to do to get his middle initial used? I mean, I always say my name, Brett L. McAtee, and no one refers to me, but he drops my L. And my L is important to me. Come on, give me a break. I was given that L stands for Lee. I was given that in honor of General Robert E. Lee, so the least people can do is give me my L. Continue with the brilliance of Dr. Owen Strachan at this point. He says, quote, kinism is the partial, the sinful preferring of your own people over others. I'm going to read that again because it's really hard to believe. Kinism is the partial, the sinful preferring of your own people over others. So let me get this straight. My preferring my own wife and children over other women and children, not my own, is sinful? Is that what you're saying, Owen? Does this man even think about what he writes before he writes it? Owen Strachan's behavior at the G3 conference and in his Substack article is proof positive once again that the visible church needs to split apart. We need a movement to start different denominations. We could start one called the Reformed Occidental Church, ROC, Rock, where you find the rock. Attend the Reformed Occidental Church where you can stand on the rock. I have all these ad campaigns already figured out in my head. But we need a movement to start different denominations that have as part of their confession an explicit allegiance to kinism and or Christian nationalism. Well, for example, we could put in our confession, therefore we detest the errors of the political Anabaptists who would insist that the God of the Bible has to share sovereignty with all the other gods in the public square. We could add in our confession about the natural orders of love. We could talk about in a Reformed Occidental Church, we could talk about that it's natural to love one's own, that it's natural to be partial to one's own people, that it's not sinful to have these concentric circles of affections. But no, the egalitarians are now in the driver's seat in the visible church. The egalitarians are the ones who are insisting that all colors bleed into one. The egalitarians, basically, they should all just be named John Lennon. Remember John Lennon? Imagine there's no heaven. Imagine that there are no nations. Imagine all the people standing at the end of time. I mean, they're pulling a Babel routine and they're coding it all with a patina of Christianity. Indeed, today on Twitter, Owen Strachan even said that there's some dark alchemy working in the Reformed world, where men are really turning Christianity upside down. Well, I got to admit it, Owen, I am the king of dark alchemy, and I'm contending that you're the one who has perverted Christianity into being a suicide pact. Well, I've gone on enough. If I don't go too much further, I'll probably commit more sin. I don't think I've committed sin, but this gets my blood up when Owen starts saying these kind of things. Anyway, this is Pastor Brett with Matt. Thank you for listening. And if you're around Owen, you might want to wear some garlic or some anti-vampire stuff because this guy is really out there. Godspeed and good night.
Thank you for joining us this week. Look for us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Anchor FM.